All right. Well, welcome to the Unscripted Pharmacist podcast. I am here at the Headwaters Adventure in Rancho Cordova. I'm in the stock room here. Got plenty of paddleboards and kayaks here. They rent them, they sell them. Really exciting to have Brian let me into his warehouse, and we're shooting the podcast right from here. And I am super stoked because I have got Dr. Bhasin. Now, Dr. Bhasin's a radiologist, and you never see these people. Like, you're literally in a cave, a very dark cave. So this isn't something like, it's amazing, first of all, that a physician would actually be on this same level of understanding, considering you're studying scans, right? You're studying all these radiological diagnostic procedures and nothing to do with nutrition. But somehow you've gone down this road, and I think this is fascinating. Tell us how you started with this.
Yeah, I've been a radiologist for about 15 years. 15 years here on the West Coast. And in radiology, we're reading all the CT scan, ultrasound, MRI, X-rays. We're usually in the dark room. That's why you don't see the radiologists. We're the consultants to your physician usually. If you go into your doctor, they'll order X-ray or CT. They'll get it done. We'll read the scan. We'll send it back to the report to your doctor, and then your doctor might say, "Oh yeah, we saw this," but it's usually the radiologist reading it. And this is where I've been practicing, and over the years, a couple of things have always bothered me. One of the biggest thing that has bothered me throughout my practice is, why am I seeing cancers in younger and younger patients? This is probably my first biggest why. So I actually, over my years of practice, I've started seeing breast and rectal cancers, specifically those two, more often in young patients. And I see them in young patients as young as 20s and 30s. Wow. So this is where we're not doing our screening at that point. Breast cancer, usually the mammography will start around 40. And then for rectal cancer, the screening used to be starting at the age of 50, but recently got bumped down to 45 because we were seeing some younger cancers. But even then, it's not going to catch the ones that I'm seeing in radiology in their 20s and 30s. And then I think the second reason why I had to do a deep dive into the nutrition rabbit hole in 2022 is fatty livers. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It's had a recent name change, which is more appropriate, which is, metabolic associated. And this is where the more I practice, in the location where I'm practicing, normally I think the statistics show 1 in 3 adults has fatty liver, and then 1 in 10 kids sadly has fatty livers. And then there's no pharma or medication to treat fatty liver. So this is like,
if we did, it would be just a lab. We would be treating a lab, like a gemfibrozil or a fibrate. We're gonna just stuff. It's gonna lower your triglycerides, but we're gonna just stuff that liver full of fat. So
yeah. So
it doesn't really.
And I'm seeing these, and I'm diagnosing these, but it's like, am I really helping? And there's no medication to treat this. How can I help my patients that I'm seeing so often with this? And that was my really two big whys of why I had to really do a deep dive in nutrition. And I would say 2022 was the really year that I got into the nutrition rabbit hole. And whoa, it's really deep.
Yeah. When you see these scans, are people really going, "Hey, I think I might have fatty liver disease. Let's go to the hospital"? Like, how are you finding these? Are these on some other abdominal CT, and you just happen to notice that the liver looks unusual? Like, how are you finding these?
So I would say more than half of these cases are just it's routine scanning. We're just scanning for something else. Someone might come into the ER and then they have abdominal pain. They might have appendicitis or diverticulitis. So I'm catching those things, but at the same time, I'm looking at the liver, and the liver is positive for fatty liver. And then we do get a lot of cases where the ultrasound is ordered after the fact that the LFTs are elevated. So when I see an ultrasound, usually those are the ones that are ordered to check for fatty liver. But usually the CT scans, it's usually coming out through the ER or for some other reason, but I'm catching a lot of them. And then sadly, let's say CTs, more than half of the CTs that I'm reading in adults are I'm diagnosing with fatty liver.
Wow. That's a lot. That's insane. Okay, so what other, so you see the CT scan, you see the fatty liver, then what's the next step? Like you're looking at liver function tests, or there are other labs that people at home can go, all right, I need to go look at my labs very carefully and go, all right, is there a possibility that I have NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or this stupid new name? And I really do wish that more names in medical science had the origin. Like, why don't you call metabolic syndrome insulin resistant syndrome, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like, let's go to the origin in the name if you're going to go through all that work. So what can somebody at home, if they're whipping out their labs, what should they be looking at?
So the best ones to look at is the liver function test, the ALT and AST. And usually even the reference labs that are on there, they're usually for the population standard. So they take the population that you're at and they look at the standard over there. But this is where you really have to, I would use ALT of a 25 or above is abnormal. So I would use 25 as a good, you want to be optimal. You don't want to be normal. When I talk about labs I always recommend to be optimal. And this is where ALT less than 25. And then if your liver function tests are elevated, basically you can fix your diet since there's no pharma medication that you can take. And then you can monitor that over time and see if it's trending in the right direction to see if you're reversing your fatty liver.
So it's not just here's this cutoff. And I know I've worked at a hospital where the cutoff was 55 on the AST and ALT, which is insane. But you're right. When you're sampling a very sick population, these numbers are really high, right? So you're finding that really probably when you went to school as well as when I went to school, that a normal LFTs was 25 or less. And so patients shouldn't be just looking at it green, yellow, or red, because red's probably way too late.
Right.
So I don't know what your HMO that you work for has a cutoff, but it's probably not 25.
Yeah, we're using the same standard reference labs. And again, you have to look at, I would use 25 as a good ALT number to use. And usually, I'm actually not the one that's ordering the labs. It's usually coming from the primary care provider. So I actually never order labs. I'm just seeing the imaging and then I'm diagnosing. And usually what I do now is whenever I see fatty liver on imaging, I actually go back and take a look at the labs. And actually some of the fatty livers, it's at 20. I'm seeing fatty liver and I can diagnose it. But the numbers are not matching up. And some are in 30. So it's very close to that 25 range. But some even less than 25. I'm able to see it on the imaging itself. But the lab work is not picking it up. So I think 25 would be an optimal level to just remember when you're looking at your labs.
And then do you look at lipid panels if you have one?
So lipid panel, I'm not ordering it. But this is
fun to look at.
The fasting lipid panel, very important. And this is, I like to keep everything very, very simple as possible for patients to really understand. So this is where I have 3 simple steps to being healthy, which we can talk about, and also 3 simple lab tests that you can see to check on your metabolic health. And again, your metabolic health, how healthy you are, gets back to your diet. And this is where the statistics are really, really staggering. 2022 tough study showing 93% of adults are metabolically unhealthy. So again, 93% of patients in the US, the adults, we can actually help get healthier. And metabolic health, again, we'll go into the waist circumference, uh, your triglycerides, elevated triglycerides, low HDL, um, high blood pressure, and then elevated glucose. So remember these five things. And when we talk about these five things on the lipid panel, what do we focus on? We tend to focus on. Okay, I think you might be on mute right now.
Sorry, it's the LDL. Everybody's looking at the LDL, and you and I are not looking at the LDL because LDL really isn't part of this metabolic syndrome.
Right.
You didn't mention LDL. You mentioned triglyceride and HDL, waist circumference, high blood pressure, and high glucose, right? But this is the part that drives me nuts: is when you Google this, right? When you Google NAFLD, you get a ridiculous response which says that it's let's see, non-alcoholic is a buildup of fat in the liver that can be linked to lifestyle factors, medical conditions, and other causes. Lifestyle factors including being overweight and obese, eating a high-fat diet, not getting enough exercise can increase the development of NAFLD, and they're looking at diabetes, of course, like we talked about, high triglycerides, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. Why is this in a Google search? How in the world did cholesterol ever get into this equation here when cholesterol isn't part of it? You mentioned triglyceride and HDL cholesterol, but we want a high HDL. It just seems crazy because all the literature, all the searches that you do, you're not going to find what you and I have found.
So I think this is where we really have to go look at the history of nutrition. So over the last 50 to 70 years, we've been slowly getting into this pigeonhole of looking at total cholesterol and LDL, which has no association with your health. I think there's studies out there that if you keep your LDL low with statins to lower your risk, I think you gain about 4 days of life over a 5-year period. So this is actual studies out there, right?
Not worth the side effects.
Right.
And you see that too.
Right. But this is where I'm actually not ordering these things, and I'm actually not prescribing statins either because I'm not on the front lines. I'm actually sitting at the computer workstation and seeing what's happening, what is trickling through the population health. So actually the radiologist sees over time, because we really see a lot of scans back to back, and we can see what's going on the population health. And I'm actually an abdominal imager. So I specialize in abdominal and pelvis imaging. So that's what I'm seeing a lot of. And what's there? The liver's there. The visceral fat is there. The hidden fat that is really, really toxic, that is there. And this is where we really need to focus on the correct parameters to really help our patients. And
how would somebody know if they have a lot of visceral fat? Looking at like waist to height ratio. I know that it's if you want to keep your waist size about half of your height, right? I know in metabolic syndrome, I think the parameter is 40 inches for men and 35 for women. So if you have a waist size that big, I mean, people should go out and measure this.
Right.
You mentioned visceral fat. That's a real interesting finding. And who do you find this the most common? What type of patient? All over the place. Huh?
Very rampant. And I think I've seen that South Asians tend to have a lot of visceral fat. And this is where South Asians, you tend to see a lot of acronym is TOFI. Thin on the outside, fat on the inside. You'll see, skinny arms, skinny legs. They don't look like
You
they
can't tell.
feel great, but they are actually carrying some extra visceral adipose tissue. And again, this is where you have to check under the hood. How do you check under the hood? So this is where I would tell you. Let's get into the three lab tests that I recommend. How can you check your metabolic health and check under the hood? The first one is the triglyceride to HDL ratio. So you're gonna have your doctor. They're gonna order the fasting cholesterol. You're gonna take that. You're gonna take the triglyceride number and divide it by the HDL. This is your ratio. This is the best, according to all the experts out there, metabolic health experts. This is your best ratio that you can see how you're doing on your metabolic health. And you want this ratio to be less than 2.5. For African Americans, it's less than 1.5. But I would say for everyone, your goal should be to aim for less than 1.5 to be optimal. So you're trying to go for less than 1.5. So you're going to go get that tested. If it's abnormal, if it's elevated, yours might be 6 or it might be 8. How do you
Or
fix it?
really high. You've seen this. I'm sure you've seen some crazy ratios.
So how do you fix it? What's the fix for the high triglycerides and the low HDL? You're going to reduce your carbs and your sugars to bring the triglycerides down. That's how you fix the top number. How do you fix the HDL? You're going to increase
Saturated
your
fat.
fats, including saturated fats. This is where
Thank God for cheese.
yeah. So this is where you
Yeah.
really have to dispel all the myths. We've been given the low fat diet for way too long, and it actually does not work because it's actually lowering your HDL cholesterol, which we know it's associated with metabolic syndrome and our metabolic health. No wonder we have
Right.
93% of the adults cardiometabolically unhealthy. So that's the first one. Second lab, fasting insulin level. So this is not mainstream in medicine yet. The ones that are in the know, they're ordering this lab test. So what is fasting insulin level? This is your insulin level in a fasting state. What happens is before your glucose rises, there's going to be about 10 to 12 years where your fasting insulin level will rise to keep your glucose in check. So you're actually pre-diabetic a lot sooner than your glucose goes up. So with a fasting insulin level, you can actually catch someone that is very, very early. And again, the number that I would remember is 10 or above. The reference range might be up to 25 on your lab test, fasting insulin, but anything less than 10 is good. Above 10, you have some insulin resistance. And again, I think we haven't talked about this. Everything boils down to insulin resistance. That is the key that we really need to focus on.
And
Insulin
there's not
resistance.
enough people like you focusing on it. We need more. We need more insulin levels. We need more triglyceride to HDL. I mean, you've already talked, if you think about it, like metabolic syndrome is the insulin resistance syndrome, right? Which is responsible for all the top killers, right? But we're not measuring the one thing. And now I got to ask you this. Did they ever talk about insulin to you in med school? Even mention it? Because I thought it came in a vial. That's how they taught me.
They talk about insulin itself. Oh, the drug insulin, or
No,
insulin in our body.
just the hormone insulin. They ever
Yeah,
even
we probably
mention?
did cover it. Yes, we probably covered it
Yeah,
in med school. But nutrition,
yeah.
I
Tell me
can't
about it.
remember anything about diet at all. We might have had maybe a 1 hour class, if that. But
To
there was
calculate
zero.
calories or something.
Yeah, there was
Calculate
no,
calories. Calculate metabolic rate. How much is it? How much is the deficit? Like this is how you lose weight. This is how you gain weight. Like really?
but
You
nothing.
want us to become obsessed with weighing our food? That's what that's what they're asking you to do, right? I'm I'm surprised you even got any nutritional training because I did, but it wasn't useful. We thought in pharmacy school that it was a TPN, total parental nutrition. It was fats, amino acids, and dextrose, and just put it into this mixture, and then you fed it to people. That was my understanding of nutrition. I didn't know what real food was. Like
Yeah.
how much fat is in this? I don't know. What will that do to you? I don't know. You've discovered something completely different. And do you get out of that cave and go, hey, here's a brochure, which I want to get to your brochure, which is really cool. Do you say, this is what we need to talk about here with the
So
patient? I don't think I've ever seen a radiologist talk to a patient. That's cool.
yeah, this is where I had to really, once I discovered how you know how bad our health is, this is where I really need to get the message across to my patients and also my colleagues to try to, since I didn't learn any of this in medical school, the nutrition part, my colleagues did not get that either. So they can all use the help in really getting up to speed on what is the correct diet. Because what happens right now is there's a lot of big food marketing on when we were kids. What did we watch? Cartoons, and in between cartoons, commercials for cereals. It's
Right.
probably the worst food out there, I would
I
say.
know. I know.
So we've been programmed since birth with the big food marketing machine. So we really need to relearn. And this is where I consider myself, after learning all the nutrition stuff, I'm trying to make it very, very simple for patients to understand how to get healthy, and also to get across to my colleagues how they can help their patients. Because usually I don't have that much direct contact. The direct contact that I do have as a radiologist, the one place that I see patients is mammography. So radiologists are the ones that see the mammograms. So we read the mammograms, which is screening mammogram. We will look at it when you come in. Patients usually come in after starting at the age of 40, women, and they'll do it every year. When they get the mammogram done, the radiologist will take a look at it and will read it. Majority of them, 95%, 90 to 95% are negative. So we just put in a report. You'll get it in the mail, negative. Some of them will get a call back. We'll call the patient back and say, hey, there's something that might be overlapping. We don't want you to get worried. We just need to do some additional imaging. So the patient will come back. They'll get additional imaging. Sometimes we might do a spot compression view, just try to, if it was overlapping breast tissue. We might also do a follow-up ultrasound to see. And then the radiologist talks to the patient after the diagnostic workup. And we let them know everything's fine. And majority of those cases, most of them will be fine. If we do find something, we usually offer like a biopsy to find out exactly what it is. If we see a mass and it looks suspicious, we offer biopsy, and it's usually the radiologist that does that. But if everything's normal, I sit down with the patient. I tell them everything looks normal. You're good to go for 1 year. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to empower you with 3 simple steps that you can do between now and your next screening mammogram to prevent cancer. So this is what I'm telling the patient. You're going to try to prevent cancer and dementia. And if you have any of those other diseases, high blood pressure, high blood glucose, we're going to try to reverse some of that stuff. And again, and then I go into my 3 simple steps. This is what you're going to do. 1, 2, 3. And it usually takes me about a minute and a half, not too long. I've got it down pretty well. And I don't know if you're able to pop out that brochure real quick. I don't know if you
Oh,
had that handy.
I did look at that. I was just wondering. I was in a break room and I overheard some radiologists, and they were talking about ketogenic lifestyle. They were talking about the keto flu. And then one of them's like, yeah, I heard cancer is a metabolic disease. And he goes, I'm a radiologist. Think about it. Radioactive glucose. And I'm scanning it to see what is bright on my scan where the tumor cells uptake the most glucose because cancer cells love glucose. He's like, that's it. That's all I need. Like, yeah, exactly. It's the Warburg effect. It was really enjoyable to talk, just like it is to talk to you. It's just be able to talk about really what's the truth, what's the root cause of this problem. No, we never talk about the root cause. So I think it's phenomenal. I gotta grab my. I will
And
pull
that's
it
where
up.
the FDG PET studies. That's what we do. Cancer
Yeah,
patients, we take
tell me about that.
radio labeled glucose, and we actually inject it into patients, and then we image the patients afterwards to see where the cancer is and if there's any metastasis. And again, the radio labeled glucose, it will go to where the cancer cells are. And this shows you, yes, cancer loves glucose. And that's where, you know, sugar is a problem since we're all addicted
Yeah,
to it. Sugar and carbs, we're addicted. So as a nation,
yeah.
and we really have to call that out.
And I
And,
like what Ken Berry says. He's like, this is not your fault. No one's to blame for this. Like, it's not your fault, but it's still your problem. Let's work together on coming up with a solution. And your solution, which is number one, avoid certain fats, two, reduce carbs and sugar, and then three, implementing intermittent fasting, IF. How well is that received?
yeah, I think this is where it really, I want to empower the patients to take charge of their health. I think most patients want to lose weight, they want to get healthier, but they're getting competing messaging from here and there that this is what you should do, this is not. So I'm trying to take all that messaging, clarify the noise. So how do I clarify
Good.
the noise? I tell them three simple steps you're going to do. You're not going to you don't have to change your diet. Whatever diet you are, if you're a vegetarian, stay vegetarian. If you're a carnivore, stay carnivore. If you're doing traditional diet, stay that way. Just follow these three principles. So the three principles. First is to avoid toxic seed and vegetable oils. Really, really terrible for our health. We really have to get this out of our system. Uh, you have to, I think everyone needs to go watch the YouTube video, How is Canola Oil Made? So go into
Oh,
YouTube, put in How is Canola. If you haven't seen it,
I don't think I have. I've seen some about processed fats and seed oils and all the. I think they're adding benzenes or superheating it or cooling it. It's a long process for something that should be easy to find when it comes to fat, right?
yeah, so
And
this
it's
is where,
still not stable fat. It's really unstable, easily oxidizable, very easy to get rancid in comparison to healthy fats.
yeah, so this is where we really have to get all these corn, canola, cottonseed. There's eight of the hateful eight that you really
Okay,
need to get out of
I
your
like it.
diet.
Hateful eight.
Uh, and then you want to substitute them for healthy fats, right? So this is where I like to give simple six that I recommend is olive oil, avocado oil, butter, which is clarified butter, coconut oil, and beef tallow. You don't have to pick all of these. Just pick the one that fits with your diet and whichever one you like. So
Ghee,
these are
right?
the
Yes.
yeah. So these
Yeah.
are yeah. I think ghee you can even find in like Costco and stuff, or you go to an Indian store. Um,
Yeah.
you
Very
really want
stable.
to yeah, and you want to go back to the ancestral diet. I think this is where the our ancestors really knew what to eat because they were eating natural stuff, right? Not the factory made vegetable oils. And again, vegetable oil is marketing. It's really, it really triggers in the head that, oh, vegetable oil, it must be good, right? It's coming from vegetables. But no, we really have to. fight this message because
Right.
it's a
But it
moneymaker.
lowers my cholesterol. But it lowers my LDL. It lowers my cholesterol. Must be good,
And
right?
that's not
This is
necessarily
this is
healthy.
yeah. This is the debate we're going to go. We're going to continue probably for the next 10 years. This
But there
cholesterol
is
debate.
studies. There are studies. I don't have the reference handy with me right now.
Yeah.
But older adults, the ones that were a higher LDL level, lived
Longer.
longer. Right. This is the studies are out there. We know the
Yep.
data now, so you can
Right.
actually prove that LDL is not the one that we really should be focusing on.
Right. Right.
And then the second step is low carbs and high healthy fats. Again,
And avoid sugar.
yeah,
Yes. Very low carb.
Carbs and sugars, we're addicted as a nation. We have to call out the addiction. Healthcare, in healthcare, if you really wanted to reverse chronic diseases, we would really tackle this as an addiction, get all hands on deck, including mental health. We really need support for these folks that
Hmm.
are really addicted uh, to the ultra processed foods in the middle of the shopping center. So what I do
Right.
is I tell my patients, within I'm doing a little longer version, but this is within 2 minutes. I tell them when you go to the grocery store, you're going to stick to the periphery. That's where all the real food is: fruits, vegetables, meat, dairy. Uh, in the middle, ultra processed addictive substances, and then I tell them you're going to feel a little tap on your shoulder next time you go through the aisle, and that's
Right.
Dr. Bhasin telling you put your guard up.
Yeah.
This
All
is
right.
where all the stuff that has you addicted. And then Americans are eating 60 to 70% of our calories from ultra processed foods. So as long as we
Way
can
too
even
much.
cut it down, we don't need to go to zero. You can still have a cookie or a chip here and there, but we really need to bring it down from the 60 to 70%. That is way too much. Wow, we
Right.
can't be doing that. And that really is a problem. And
Right.
then the third step, intermittent fasting. I think this is Dr. Jason Fung. I would have to give him a lot of credit. I've been watching some of his stuff. Amazing
Yeah.
doctor. He really lays it out why fasting works. He's written 3 books. I think one is Fasting Code. Diabetes Code. One is
Obesity
Cancer Code,
code.
and
Right.
Obesity Code.
Obesity code. Right. Right. Right.
This is
Yeah.
where everything links back to the insulin resistance. And when you're not eating, you're not pumping insulin. It's a really simple concept.
Right.
And
It should
again,
be our natural state, right? We should be very, very insulin sensitive. We probably didn't see much carbohydrates in our, you know, primal diet. I think
right,
ketosis is probably our natural state, right?
exactly.
Fat is a wonderful fuel that we're not accessing. We got tons of it. We just need to open up the lock and key here by reducing insulin through intermittent fasting, low carb, right? Decreasing your seed oils. It all kind of centers around what is the cause of metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance. And if you want to go a step further, I'd say it's mitochondrial dysfunction. So why don't we call metabolic syndrome mitochondrial dysfunction, just like we did with the NAFLD,
Right, right.
right?
And again, this is where the marketing machine, really big food, we're recommended that we should, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Snacking is very healthy. And I was under the same impression before I did this deep dive. I used to think small snacks throughout the day were good, and I used to do that.
You did
Um,
yo-yo dieting for a while. You tried,
or I,
huh?
no, I was never overweight. But I always had like a little bit of a belly, the Indian
Little
wealthy,
visceral fat.
visceral fat. I
Yeah.
could tell.
Right.
And this is where I could never get rid of it. I don't know. I did a lot of workout, did cardio and stuff, but never went away. But
Right.
ever since I started doing intermittent fasting,
Go on.
very
Yeah.
easy. Because what
Isn't that great?
intermittent fasting does is it gives you control of your diet. And I think, again, this is a very powerful tool to break the addiction to foods. When you're not snacking throughout the day and you're only planning 2 meals. So I usually tell my patients that What's healthy for most adults is 2 meals in an 8 hour window, or if you're normal weight, then 3 meals in a 12-hour window. But if you
Right.
want to lose weight, how do you lose weight? Low carbs and intermittent fasting. Very, very
Together.
powerful. And this is how it's sustainable long term, and this is the way you lose weight and keep it off. And that's the
Right.
messaging that we really need to get across to our patients. um,
Right. So pretty well received, but I guess as a radiologist, you probably don't see like the follow up.
I don't
Hey,
see
how
the
did that work? Yeah.
so I
Except for
do.
probably your colleagues, though, right?
My colleagues and then my staff member in radiology. So I've spread the message first. They were the test ground first initially. So I talked to
Yeah.
them, and some
Yeah.
of them actually went with it running, and they actually took the lead on spreading the message to the other techs. And I've had colleagues and staff member lose anywhere from 5 to 40 pounds in like a 1 year period.
Doesn't take very
And
long. Isn't that crazy?
yeah,
Yeah.
eh,
I would just anyone I could trap in a hallway, security guard, nurse, it doesn't matter. Like, hey, I got something I need to share. Come on, I'll give me 5 minutes, or I would go into patients' rooms, right? And I technically I wasn't allowed to. Like, since when does a pharmacist walk into a room? But I asked the number one question: was, what are you eating, right? And then I give him my spiel, like, hey, let me tell you how to get off of medications and stay off of medications. And if I can trap somebody for 20 minutes and say, hey, let me tell you everything that's wrong about the diet that you're currently following and what you can do to fix it. Wasn't as well organized and planned like your beautiful little brochure, right? But it's effective. And when you get that feedback, it is amazing how good you feel. And that's kind of like that's where our passion comes from, is from results. Results from your coworkers, results from patients. What I would love to see is that if you had that feedback and say, hey, yeah, you were right. My triglycerides dropped in half. That is a typical finding on a ketogenic diet. And I would even tell somebody, if you're doing the ketogenic diet and those triglycerides didn't move, you're not doing it right. Something is wrong. You're not in ketosis, because that that triglyceride drops by at least 50%. I think in the Verta Health study, they had a triglyceride drop of over 50%. And they had like an A1C reduction of 1.5, 30-pound average weight loss over 2 years. And you're experiencing the exact same thing. And so this diet really works for Homo sapiens, right? And nobody else, right? This is who it works for.
yeah.
So I have an issue when people go, yeah, I tried it. Didn't work for me. I'm like, well, you got different biology. Where are you from? Like, are you an alien? Because it works for everybody. And it's like advice that you have total confidence over. And as you're continuing to work with your colleagues, you're going to continue to see your colleagues believe in you through their results. So I'm kind of wondering, what kind of response do you get from physicians that you're sharing this information with?
So this is where the physicians that I've presented this as a CME at like 4 or 5 different facilities, an amazing response afterwards. Saying thanks for the eye-opening message on what is good diet and nutrition. Um, but at the same time, it's very hard to change physician practice. It's
Yeah,
it's very, very tough. So it will be a slow, gradual process of making a change. But hey, I'm here. I have a lot of patience, uh,
yeah,
but we really do need to make this change, because I think what we're seeing is a flood of patients that have the fatty liver. So once you have fatty liver, your cost to healthcare is 80% more than a non, someone that's without fatty liver. And pre-diabetics, that is another big flood. That is 1 in 3 adults. Again, similar to the fatty livers statistics,
yeah.
1 in 3 adults is pre-diabetic. So if we don't reverse those patients, they actually cost twice as much to the healthcare system. So this will actually, if we don't reverse these things, whatever system you're in, it's going to bankrupt your system. The cost will
Yeah.
overwhelm any
And
organization.
right.
This is
And that's
what
just medical costs. What about all the other like lost productivity, work days? I mean, there's a lot of costs that we're not really accounting for. Sleep, brain fog, right? Like all these problems all associated with really a preventable disease,
right,
right? This is all prevention.
right, exactly.
What's the barriers and obstacles to physicians understanding what you and I know?
So I think one thing that I've noticed is in in healthcare and overall, there's actually a really people tend to think that the solution to reversing a lot of these diseases is through a whole food plant based diet. So that is a narrative that I see very, very prevalent throughout healthcare and outside of healthcare. So where is this messaging coming from? I had to do a deep dive. I like to, once you really go down to the nutrition rabbit hole, you really want to question everything because
Right,
everything that you really learned, it's been turned on its head. So where is
right,
this whole food plant-based messaging coming from? And I will listen to a great podcast by Belinda Fetke, wife of Dr. Gary Fetke. So I would highly
that's
recommend
great.
listening to. You
Yeah.
probably heard some of her.
Yeah, another person on this who was a vegan for 20 years and worked for Mars in food industry was Zoe Harcomb, Zoe, and then
Oh
Harcomb,
yeah,
Harcomb. Very, very interesting. Her take as a vegan as to when she really looked at the guidelines. But what's crazy, like we're talking about this, and here's the problem: like if you type in like best diet for weight loss, you're not going to get Belinda Fetke. You're going to get a whole lot of what you're saying, whole food, whole grains. You got to eat this plant-based diet, and you're probably finding like I am that it's way down that Google list. Unless what I've finally did is I argued with ChatGPT for a few hours. So when I ask ChatGPT, I get what I need, the actual truth versus I don't want to wade through, one or two pages before I get to truth. Just like I was telling you, NAFLD, they're going to try to say that it's cholesterol, like, and it's genetic. Like, no, it's not. Okay, this is preventable. This didn't exist prior to 1980. This diagnosis,
yeah.
where did this come from? Like how? Like this was discovered in someone eating fruit, right? Like this is. I don't know. Sorry.
So this, yeah, you really have to. I think we really should not be advocating for any particular diet at all. As healthcare providers, we should be sensitive to all patients' ethnicities and backgrounds and cultures. If we're just picking a whole food plant based diet, we're just taking 5% of the way to get healthy. I'm not saying you can't be healthy with whole food plant based, but it takes a lot more effort, and you have to really supplement it. That kind of a diet. Pick that diet if that aligns with your beliefs. But we should never be advocating for this. And this is where I see a almost like a roadblock. Like any ideas that are interesting and make sense, backed by science, they just get blocked. So that's
I feel like
the
they got. I feel like they have part of the equation. They'll say it's ultra processed food. I need to eat whole foods, but then they'll turn around and go, well, I'm going to do a plant based diet and I'm going to load up on potatoes and I'm going to eat all these carbohydrates, right?
and then
But
you're
it's
gonna
whole food and it's not ultra processed. It's
and then
more than just ultra processed.
you might even do the imitation butter, right? That's made from plant based, and then you're gonna one of those imitation meats. Again, that's ultra processed food. It's filled with seed oils, and that's not the right. It's really hard to be a vegan, especially in our food environment where everything is, a lot of GMO, big agricultural stuff. So it is very, very hard. I think so. This is where we really need to focus on our, our energy on what the problem is. The problem here is ultra processed foods filled with the three ingredients: sugars, seed oils, and refined carbs. So, ultra processed foods, that is the enemy,
Right.
not the animal fats and proteins. I get a lot of people saying, oh, we should be careful of red meat, but all the data that I've seen, red meat is totally healthy. There's nothing to be feared. We
Yeah.
need to get that fear out of our system. If you eat meat, red meat is totally fine. And then again, saturated fat. This is not a
The
problem.
boogeyman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, there was a good Journal of American College of Cardiology article from a couple of years ago, and they said, yeah, we need to start going with a food-based approach. Let people know natural saturated fats, including they had red meat on there, whole fat dairy, dark chocolate. These things are doable. So that is not
And
the
those,
boogeyman. We need to
right.
divert.
Yeah, at first it was cholesterol. Then they switched to it's the saturated fat. I mean, Ansel Keys even admitted, okay, it's not cholesterol, but you still have the American Heart Association going. Cholesterol is not a nutrient of concern. Most of it is produced by the body. Only like 15% comes from diet. However, we think you should limit to less than 300 milligrams per day. Wait a minute. You just finished saying it's not a nutrient of concern, so why are you putting limitations on it? Same thing with the American Diabetes Association, right? They're saying the amount of carbohydrates necessary. This is from the 2015 guidelines. The amount of carbohydrates necessary to sustain life is 0. However, we recommend at least, like 150 grams per day of carbohydrates. So you see it in the hospital all the time. You see those diabetic trays. You've seen how much is on those. I
It's
mean, it seems like it's oranges and potatoes and snacks and crackers and everything, and then they're basically eating all day long, and their glucose levels are out of control. And we're trying to chase it with insulin. They're not going home, right? And no one's scratching their head going, maybe we should change. How many dietitians have you run into that would teach what you and I are teaching? It's almost impossible. They would be better off just not knowing anything about nutrition and start from scratch. If you didn't know anything about nutrition and some radiologist walks in and wants to talk to me about food, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. That makes total sense. I think I'm going to give that a shot. Boom. I lost a bunch of weight.
and this is where I had no preconceived. When I did the deep dive, I didn't follow any kind of program. I
It's
just
good.
plain state what is the root cause. Elon Musk, first principles thinking. What is the root cause? Insulin resistance is the root cause. What got us here? It's our ultra processed foods in the middle of the supermarket. Most supermarkets, we should just have a small store with a refrigerator and a freezer for the frozen vegetables, and we would be much healthier. So this is where shop local, go to your farmers,
Right.
get to know your local farmers, go to the farmers market, your butcher. The more local you can go, the healthier you will be. Than to get.
So are you advocating, because are you advocating like I would be, and that is that it needs to be a grassroots, boots on the ground. Everybody needs to educate themselves, right? What you and I are doing, exchanging this valuable information to educate people so that they can take responsibility for the healthcare that they're paying for. Do you ever see that healthcare would ever change? I mean, we're talking about the food industry. I, I think that might be the last one to change. I don't know who's going to change first between healthcare and food, but what do you envision for say the next 10 years as far as how change is going to come about?
So healthcare, I think the incentives have to change in healthcare.
To what?
Healthcare, the incentives have to be to keep patients and members healthy rather than paying for procedures and more, you know. So the incentives have to align with keeping patients and members healthy. And
like a
that
like a
is a,
like a value based.
right,
Like
right. And
you're going to
that's
get paid so much extra money if you lose weight, or so much extra money if you reverse diabetes, or this is how your reimbursement's going to work out. Then I think you'd have physicians listening to you and to me.
right, right.
Yeah, be nice.
And this is where actually I do see in healthcare, like places like Verda, they have systematic approach to reverse type 2 diabetes and for weight loss using the ketogenic diet. There's a program that was started by United Healthcare, which is level 2, um, and they're using low carbs and intermittent fasting to reverse type 2 diabetes and for weight loss. Again, that's
Cool.
level 2 health. So we are
Uh,
starting to change. We have to change because I think as a nation, we're not competitive. We will actually we are already spending too much on healthcare as is. But if
right.
we don't reverse all those pre-diabetics and they go on to diabetes, and if we don't reverse the fatty liver, a lot of those patients will end up needing transplants. And a statistic that I
Expensive.
heard from one of my GI colleagues is by the end of this decade, there's going to be more cirrhotics needing liver transplant from fatty liver disease than from hepatitis. So from the viruses. Instead, we're going to
Uh,
be because of the food uh, and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So this is where we're heading. We really need to change the trend with food as medicine, and I think make it simple for patients to really understand how it is that they can really get healthy. It's very doable. We have to break the addiction. The addiction is there.
yeah.
We have to call it out.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say that we're all addicts. I think we are by nature dopamine seekers. Whatever way, it could be exercise, it could be other vices, right? And I think we need to come together and go, okay, this is my behavior, this is what I'm doing, and if I get out of my automatic zone and start being mindful and going, what am I doing? What am I feeling? Am I really actually hungry? Is what's driving me to eat this? Right? Is this something that I always do when I watch TV? Is this something that I always do when I drive the car? Is Get out of this automatic zone and be mindful and go, hey, I remember Dr. Bhasin said, don't eat these refined carbohydrates. I'm going to do that today. And I'm one day at a time, right? Um, your who made your brochure? Because I think this is interesting that anyone can understand these simple three concepts.
Yeah, actually, my son, who's in college right now, I told him I have these ideas. I want you to put this into a trifold for me and help me out. And
Very
he
cool.
actually helped me create that trifold.
That's
So
cool.
I have to give credit. Harpreet is his name, so
Yeah,
he
that's
really helped
that's
me.
awesome. Yeah, especially when you bring it home. So, I mean, you've got kids. How young are your kids? Do you have to deal with food in the home? Because that's a huge challenge.
So they're actually we're empty nesters now. So we got two
Oh,
kids in
nice.
college. But yeah, they hear me all the time now, um, and I think they're getting the message. I think one thing that I forgot to mention was the fries and the soda. The fries and soda
Uh,
at fast food has to go. This is the reason why I'm seeing so many kids with fatty liver. I've diagnosed a kid as young as 10 with fatty liver. And one of my colleagues pinged
uh,
me about a month ago. They said they saw a 7-year-old with fatty liver.
they haven't been around long enough to even you would think to develop that. Like how much exposure has a kid had in order to develop fatty liver? They must have been started maybe in utero.
So this is where the combination of the seed oils in the fries, and toxicologists have done studies. They've shown that a large fries at any fast food chain toxins are equivalent to 25 cigarettes. So toxicologists have their own conferences.
Right.
MDs have their own conferences. We don't talk to each other. And this is where Dr. Kate Shanahan, I've watched some of her material, and she's great in this space. And she showed that this is what the toxicologists are screaming at the top of their lung. We need to listen. So that's a big problem when you go out. The seed oils are really, really bad, but messages getting across. I see a big fast food chain. They're experimenting with a couple of restaurants in New York City. I think it's Shake Shack, using an oil that is a non-seed oil for healthier fries. So they're actually experimenting right now, and hopefully it'll roll out across the country. We have like a local butcher place. They make their fries in beef tallow, so you can get healthier fries or make it at home in avocado oil. And then the soda. Soda is a really, really big problem, and this is where Dr.
Diet
Robert.
or regular? Doesn't
None.
matter. Huh?
Yeah, I think probably the regular is worse, but even the diet is really, really bad, because what's happening with diet soda is if you're in between meals, you're just sitting at your, at work, and you're sipping on the diet soda, your body thinks glucose is on its way.
The sweetness on the tongue,
right?
releasing insulin. Now you're ready to
Your
eat.
pancreas is still pumping insulin. Your pancreas is pumping insulin in between meals. So this is the problem with diet soda. Get that out. And this
I've never heard of anybody going, "Hey, I lost 30 pounds," switching from regular Coke to Diet Coke. You just never hear that. It doesn't work.
I think this is, again, insulin is the key, right? And I think a great number to remember is 12 hours. 12 hours of keeping insulin low enough for long enough is when you unlock your body's fat freezer. And that's when you're going to start melting your own body's fat. So this is where you hear a lot of 16-8 all around. So people are fasting for 16 hours. They're still drinking water, black coffee, black tea, nothing with artificial flavors or sweeteners. But after the 12 hours, you're using your own body's fat for energy. And that's...
You got plenty of it.
We all
Brain's
have...
just feasting off of it, right?
And this is very powerful, where everyone has the power of unlocking your own body's healing powers. And again, when you get into fasting, you talk about autophagy and also ketogenic diet, autophagy, where body goes around and clean up its damaged cells. And this is really something that has been hidden from us for too long by the big food marketing. We need to unlock our body's potential and really utilize it to heal.
We all have the mechanism. We all have the machinery, essentially, to lose weight. But it's that one key hormone that's standing in the way, the energy storage hormone, right?
Exactly.
Insulin. Yeah. No, I love that. That's really good.
So really get to the root cause, the 3 steps. Hopefully all your listeners will remember the 3 steps. And then the 3 lab tests. I think we talked about the first and second. The third lab test was hemoglobin A1C. I think most people know about that. It's
almost too late, but I agree. You should measure that. But there's so many, you may never become diabetic or even pre-diabetic, but you may have cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, cancer. And the warning sign was your insulin level was elevated a long time ago, and no one caught it because there's not enough people measuring insulin, or at least looking at triglyceride to HDL ratio, which I think is a great proxy for insulin resistance. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and not to mention the small, dense LDL particles, if you want to go down that rabbit hole with cardiovascular disease. What's driving this whole process here? What's in that plaque? What are these, highly atherogenic, small, dense, glycated and oxidized little LDL particles? Why is it there, right? Who generated that, and how did so many of them get there? We're not looking at this from the right perspective. Those are you mentioned the 5 labs of metabolic syndrome. That's really what we need to focus on. If you have these issues, this is where you need to be. And you're saying, 90% over 90% of the population has this problem. Yet we're looking in all the wrong places. We're looking at LDL instead of triglyceride and HDL.
Yeah, all our goals should be to get into that 7% and stay there, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
these are the
Exactly.
powerful tools, and then food and fasting is the way to get there. There's no medication, there's no magic pill that's gonna get us there. We cannot. We need to stop as a nation. We need to stop waiting for the magic pill or shot. There is
It's
no
amazing.
magic pill.
Yes, they're all standing in line, waiting for the shortage to be over for these at the pharmacy, waiting for the stuff to come in. It's like, while you're waiting, have you ever thought about like really fueling your body with these wonderful little ketones? Not to mention that you have so much extra fat that you're just wasting it in your breath and in your urine. Yeah, it's like 250, 300 calories a day is just wasted out in the atmosphere, right? Acetone, it's gone, right? There's little pieces of fat leaving my body, right? And what's amazing is what I found is how well the brain functions, my physical activity, how I really feel like never tired. I sleep like a rock, but I feel energized to do like paddleboarding, whatever the heck it is, doesn't matter. Right?
Yeah,
I can eat a normal meal, my kind of meal, and then go, hey, you want to go for like a hike? Okay, I'm ready. Let's go. I can do it. Right? I don't have to go. Hang on a minute. I gotta sleep. I gotta take a nap. Right? I got this brain fog. I'm tired. I can hardly move because I ate a whole bunch of carbs.
right.
Right?
You never get the
And
craft afterwards.
right. But what I find though is, and it's all about learning, right? Is when you teach a patient, this is what your glucose does when you eat these types of foods, like refined carbohydrates. Blood sugar starts at 90, goes to 200, 250, whatever the heck it is, and then drops down to 50 later. Yeah, you're tired. I would be tired too, right? You just had a radical drop in blood glucose. So you're bouncing all over the place. And this is what you alluded to earlier about mental illness. This is driving mental illness. These variations in blood glucose, like mood swings, high energy, low energy, high energy. Like, get off the roller coaster. This is
And
where
I
you need to be, where energy level is elevated all the time. You've got plenty of it.
and we do see an explosion in mental health problems. Also, again, it all links back to our metabolic health. Brain is
Yeah,
part of the body. If you're not feeding the body well, you're going to get the fatty liver, but at the same time, it's going to cause issues with the mental health as well. So
it's got to
everything's
come from
connected.
right. Energy's got to come from somewhere. It's got to come from the mitochondria. Why in the world would you ever injure your mitochondria with alcohol, with seed oils? I would go on about seed oils and mitochondrial health. Fructose, sugar, it's wicked, right? All these things are damaging the energy factories of your cells. No wonder you don't have enough energy. You have an energy problem. Mental illness is an energy problem. It's a mitochondrial dysfunction. It's a brain energy problem, which is a great book by Christopher Palmer. But
Right.
anyways, yeah. Hey, thank you for joining me. But you know what? I'm excited because I get to see you in October, right? We're doing this cancer conference, correct?
Right.
Yes. Yeah. We're going to talk about cancer, you and me. It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
And I think the low carb tribe is really, I'm gonna go to their first conference in August in San Diego. So if you're
Oh,
free
same
for
here.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, come
Yes.
join in.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
I went to the one in Denver and it was really informative. It's neat seeing all your superheroes assembled in one place. You're like, wow, man, this guy knows. It's just, I don't know. I'm like a little kid in a, candy shop. Well, I guess I shouldn't use that analogy, but it's like, wow, I'm surrounded by heroes. I'm surrounded by super people. Like, these people, but what's interesting is that everybody has that background story where they're like, you know what? I wasn't healthy. I tried it and it worked. Or I shared it with a whole bunch of people, kind of like Jason Fung and Megan Ramos. He's like, try this. The fact that people are, it just takes that humility to go, you know what? I might be wrong about this. I'm going to give this a shot because what I'm doing isn't working. I don't feel any better. Let's just give the alternative to the diet that you're following. Following a low-fat diet. Why not just switch the fuel out? instead of like primarily burning carbohydrates, let's primarily burn fats and just see what happens. What do you got to lose? Nothing, right?
Yeah.
And I love how simplified that you've made this, and I really appreciate that. We need more people like you. We need to grow our tribe, and it's super cool to have. Oh, man, I wish I worked at Grossville. We could chat for days, and just talk about low carb and try this, try that. It's fun. So,
it's happening. We're gonna make it happen. So
yeah,
it's building, we're growing. So, but all your listeners, they can spread the message. I always tell when I talk to my patients, I tell them, here's the 3 steps for cancer prevention. You're gonna share this with at least 10 other family and friends. Because the key is to get the message out.
Right. They can't help but share. They can't help but share when all of their friends are suddenly losing weight, just like all your staff.
Exactly.
The ones that will listen will lose a ton of weight. That's
and
cool.
They are listening, and they're coming back and letting me know. And these podcasts have been great. I've been able to hand it to them and tell them, hey, take this and share this with your family and friends. So thanks for doing this. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate this. So if they want to get a hold of you, how could somebody get a hold of you?
I think the best
they want to
place.
Ask some more questions.
Just go on LinkedIn and just connect on there. Send me a connect, and you can DM message on there.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much. I really appreciate what you're doing for everybody. I mean, it's having a huge impact, because when you're affecting physicians that are willing to listen to you, you think of how many people that you indirectly are affecting. Like you're making your community a better place. So I appreciate it. That's awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. And tuning into the Unscripted Pharmacist podcast. This has been a lot of fun with Dr. Bhasin. This hopefully we will be able to post this soon, and I guess we'll have your links for your brochure, correct? Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. You have a great day.
Thank you so much.